to the Todd Bowles Show. Casey Phillips here with head coach Todd Bowles. And, I figured we'd just dive in and I'd say biggest takeaways from the game that I'm sure was not your favorite so far.
You know what? We did a lot of good things. And it was a guy on each play that was responsible for something that we can't have. And from a coaching standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, we know we have to be better than that. And we have the guys on this team to do it, and we're going to work towards that.
What was your message to the team immediately after in the locker room, and then maybe what your message to the team is throughout this next week?
You know, we can coach it better as coaches. We can play it better as players. But the leadership in this team, and we can't talk about it. We just have to put in the work. It's the grind of the season. Some certain things happen at times you don't want them to happen, but the leadership in this team will have to prevail. We cannot have, and there hasn't been, any corners of the locker room where people congregate to discuss how depressed they are about losing or not doing certain things right. And the leadership has been great. The understanding of the team has been great of where we are. We know we have to coach better and play better.
And maybe most importantly, before we get into some more of the X's and O's, Cam Brate, have any updates on him and his health?
He has a sprained neck. All the tests were negative, so he's doing well right now.
That's great. And for you as a coach in a moment like that, what do you do for the team? What is the message to them? How do you kind of keep that from affecting the team and the momentum when something like that happens mid-game that can be a little scary?
I don't know if you keep them from affecting them. They see it just like you see it. You're on the field. You don't want anybody down, especially when you bring a stretcher out. So it's a real-life moment that is bigger than the game. It's a violent game. Obviously, we play it and we have a lot of fun, but it's still a violent ball game. So you have a humane part of you that feels real bad when someone goes down like that. And, it's something to think about. It's definitely something to think about.
I know that we've talked about the starts of games already a few times so far this year, and this was another one where first drive on offense, first drive on defense, not what you guys are hoping for, especially to set that tone. Does it feel like similar reasons that's happening in different games, or has it been different as to why each time, or how do you try to fix that when I know it's not, you want to start fast, so saying it versus doing it?
It's been different. This time it was a penalty. We got a roughing the passer on third down, 3rd and 10. We were off the field, and we got a roughing the passer that kept the drive alive. And 15 yards is big, especially at the start of a drive. So we know we can't do that, especially with the sensitivity of touching the quarterback these days. And it was a bad mistake. And
red zone, another thing that I know we've talked about before. I know at one point in this game, you guys had first downs at the 13, 18, 4, and 9. So knowing that if you hear that, I'm sure you're imagining there's a lot more touchdowns happening if you heard that stat. What do you feel like has been causing that? And similarly to the fast starts, how much has it been similar issues throughout different games or different reasons the red zone has been a struggle?
Well, this week there were some false starts down there. There were some penalties that backed us up at wrong times, and then lack of execution. We just got to get on the same page. We keep saying that and saying that, time for talking is over. We understand that, and we're going to work our butts off at it, and we're going to get back to work.
You brought up the penalties. How do you feel like the team has done with that overall this year, and especially even just with this game? I know this was a no turnover game. There weren't that many penalty yards, and I think overall you guys are averaging maybe 25 less penalty yards a game so far this year than last year. How have you felt about the cleanness of this season and in this last game, where the penalties are coming, the types of penalties that you guys are getting?
I still think they're too high. The false starts have got to stop. We keep shooting ourselves in the foot. Every time you look up, it's 1st and 15. Some of the post-snap things are going to happen. You don't want a lot of them to happen, but we need to go down about 3 or 4 more.
I know that the third down situation, especially 3rd and long this game, something that, again, was a bit of an issue against the Falcons. And in the second half of this game, you guys were facing them with 3rd and 11, 3rd and 15, and 13 and 15 again, and they converted all 4 of those. So what was the issue, particularly in the 3rd and long situation?
That was the most heartbreaking thing of the whole game, other than the busted play. It was a different guy on each play, and it's something we've been running since training camp, since we've been here, and we busted each play accordingly. And that was the most depressing thing about the defense, not closing it out, giving the offense a chance to get the ball back to win the game.
And I know that on offense, you guys were 2 of 2 in fourth down situations, but only 4 of 14 in your third down efficiency. So what was maybe going a little bit wrong in terms of the other side of the ball on third down for you guys?
We were off the mark as an offense. You know, we got to coach it better, and we got to play it better. We were bad on third and short, even third and inches, third and 1. We got to find a way to get 1 yard. We got some tough guys up there. We got to understand what we are and who we are going forward, as opposed to trying to make a whole bunch of different plays, and we got to be better at that.
Overall, as a coach, when you know that there are times, like you said, that it's about execution maybe, when do you feel like you guys need to change some things about how you try to scheme guys into situation, or is it just asking guys to step up more in what they're doing?
It's a little of both. You know, you got to have a feel as a coach, and then they have to step up more as well. You got to make sure your guys are in the right position to make the plays they need to make, and at the same time, they got to make them.
I know that last week you'd gotten asked a few times about the lack of attempts at QB sneaks, and then tried one this game, and it was not as effective. What are the challenges of that kind of a play? Do you feel like it is something you guys need to be able to go to a little bit more often this year, and what has maybe been the reason to not do it as often, or for the lack of success in this attempt?
Well, we did a lot in the past, you know, and we tried this time. We got stoned for a couple of inches that we couldn't get. We got to be tougher up front. We got to be tougher up front on both sides of the ball, plain and simple.
I know that one bright spot of this game was Ryan Suckup, and that has been the case all year. And while I know that it is probably never the goal for your kicker to be an MVP at this point in the season, it is nice when you need to rely on him to know what he has been producing. And that 54-yarder, his longest as a Buc and longest since 2018. So what have you seen from him, and just what is that like to know as a head coach that you have a guy like him producing the way he is?
Ryan's been solid. He's been steady. He had a great camp. He's having a great season thus far. You can rely on him. We want 7, but if we have to take 3, we know we can count on him.
All right, well, we have more coming up here with head coach Todd Bowles. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back into the Todd Bowles Show. Casey Phillips here with head coach Todd Bowles. And while Ryan Suckup has had a great game and a great season so far, I know that the rest of the special teams was not maybe their strongest outing of the year. What did you see from them and some of the issues, in whether it was the 89-yard return or just overall the game outside of Suckup on the special team side?
It was really the return. You know, certain guys went underneath at the same time on the same play where they shouldn't have, instead of played off each other, and it cost us when he went up the middle. So they got to understand who they're playing with, whether they're next to a fast guy, a power guy, a finesse guy, and understand to play off each other instead of trying to play individual ball when they get down there. They've been doing a decent job at it. It didn't happen on that play.
I know we've talked about the excitement of having Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both out there together for entire games, both of them kind of at peak of as we're getting Chris Godwin back to fully healthy. What did you see in terms of the usage of both of those guys this game, where Mike was not targeted maybe as much as some might have expected considering their depleted secondary, and Chris ended up with 95 yards, but I know that early in the game it seemed like he and Tom were having some issues trying to get connected. I think only one of the first 6 attempts was a catch to Chris. So those two guys, what did you see from their games and the way they were used?
Well, Mike drew a lot of double teams. He drew a lot of attention from those guys, so it was hard for Mike to get off right there. That allowed Chris to get off some. Chris is working his way back into shape, and the chemistry was off early, but we started connecting on a couple of them. It has to keep getting better and better. It's our job as coaches to make sure these teachable moments are transferred to next week and understand what we have to do to get better and try to get those guys free a little bit more.
And then the offensive line, what did you see from them? We'll start with pass protection. How would you kind of grade some of those guys and the unit as a whole?
Individually, they grade out well, but as a whole, as a unit, certain guys get beat at different times. Certain guys get beat at different times, and it's a different guy every play. You didn't hear much from Tristan's guy or Donovan's guy. Luke is good at the run game. He got beat a couple times, obviously. Hayward's a good player. He's a great player, and that's going to be a tough draw sometimes, but he's getting better. It just has to bring him along. We just have to keep bringing him along. We know he's going to be fine, but we got to deal with the bumps and bruises of that, and there are teachable moments for him.
Do you feel like you have seen growth in him so far this season? When, I mean, he has had a tough draw almost every week, that it feels like he's been playing some of the top guys on the defensive line that the whole league has to offer so far early in his rookie career. So how have you seen that experience affect him, you know, in terms of either trying to maintain his confidence, but then also knowing that he's getting the kind of experience that he'll need for moving forward?
Well, it's a learning experience for him, and he's going to see it every week. It's the NFL. You know, you don't have any cream puffs in this league, so he's got to get better, and he has been getting better. His confidence is great. His hand placement just has to continue to get better, and seeing more games that he sees. The more he sees it, the game slows down for him, and he's going to be fine.
And how did you feel about the run game overall? I know that Fournette ended up with 63 yards rushing and then 38, you know, receiving with a touchdown. So this guy, I mean, he just keeps putting up yards in terms of from scrimmage, finding ways to get some production from him. But overall, especially the aspect of the run game, what did you see between him and Rashad and how the O-line did?
It can get better. You know, it can get better. It wasn't bad, but it can get better. We missed a few holes there. A lot of guys, they shot through the holes. A lot of gaps were open at times where they shot through, did a good job defensively of doing that. And we can get better getting hats on hats, and we will.
I know he got that touchdown, and then the two-point conversion attempt was not successful. What did you see from that play? And looking back in hindsight, you know, what could have been done differently or what was not as effective about that?
It's a bang-bang play. They had it snuffed out pretty good. You know, if Tom had time, maybe he could have shifted to Russell in the back of the end zone, but you can't see that from a playing standpoint when everything goes how you think it's going to go, especially down there when it's got to be a bang-bang right off the top. So we usually make those plays. It didn't come through this time.
We saw that, you know, due to especially Cam Brate being out for a little while in the game, Cade Otton made another really clutch catch on third down for 17 yards, and Keefe produced a couple huge special teams tackles as well. So the two of those guys in particular, what have you seen so far this season in the way that they've been able to, maybe in a position that can be a little hard to adjust as a rookie in everything you're asked to do, already be able to be guys that I think, you know, Coach Leftwich said last week that he trusts them coming out of the huddle?
Those two have really stepped up. You know, as rookies, even as vets, the playing time they've required has been from their study, their experiences, them doing the right things, them being very tough, them being very gritty, them understanding the game plan, and very pleased with those two. We trust them completely. We can run our whole offense with those guys, and we're happy to have them.
All right, well, we have more coming up here with head coach Todd Bowles. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Todd Bowles Show. Casey Phillips here with head coach Todd Bowles. And midway through the game, you end up switching from Pickett to Trubisky on the other side. And how does that affect you guys defensively when they're switching quarterbacks mid-game and depending on who you've prepared for and just the differences in the way those two guys approach the game?
We've seen them both. Obviously, Trubisky has better legs than Pickett, just a little bit. He scrambles in the pocket more. We knew that. We let him out of the pocket 2 times, and he made a play, especially at the end of the ball game, but the plays did not change.
And Antoine Winfield, again, I mean, another sack, tackle for loss. The guy just keeps adding those kind of stats. And I believe that his 3 sacks so far this season are tied for the most by a DB in the league this year, which is partially due to his success, partially due to, I know, your scheme of where you're putting a bunch of different guys in a position to get sacks where a lot of teams that might not be the case. So why do you think he has been able to, A, execute you and your plan so well, and then also why your scheme fits a guy like him so well?
I think he can play in any scheme. You know, being generous, just saying my scheme. He can play football any team in this league. He understands the game. He loves the game. He knows how to set himself up. And when he takes off and goes, he goes. You know, he really goes. It means a lot to him to do the right things first and then to make big plays. How
much do you feel like as a head coach it is your role to have something to do with the attitude or mindset of a team, that coming after a loss like this that can be tough, or even after some wins where you want to make sure the team doesn't get too high, whatever that attitude and feeling of the locker room is, how much do you feel like that is partly your role to be involved in that, or do you say that that's a little bit more up to the guys in the locker room and the vets on the team?
It's 100% my role, to have the pulse of the team and understand what we're going into every week, win or lose. It becomes the head coach's fault, then it becomes the coach's fault, then it falls on the player. So everybody has to be responsible for that.
How much do you feel like you coach different guys on the team differently? That when it comes to, like you said, the pulse of the team and knowing that there's 53, or if you want to call it 63, guys on the team, there's not going to be just one pulse, and there's going to be a lot of different guys that respond to different things. So I imagine that's a lot on a plate to know every guy well enough to know how they need to be coached. So how do you try to approach that?
It's part of the job. You have to understand them. We get to know each other for a while, and then you understand how to coach them and what they can grasp and how to teach them, and when to talk to them about teachable moments and when to talk to them about ball. So it's a feel. As a coach, you got to have a feel. We got a bunch of coaches with good feels on it. And you have those conversations and you get a feel for them and how they play, depending on how you can talk to them and approach them. Some things are black and white. Some things you pull to the side. Some things you say out loud.
What did you want as a player from a coach? What was the thing that you needed? Were you someone who needed to get yelled at? Were you just someone who needed instruction?
I just needed honesty. The yelling's going to come regardless. The yelling's going to come. You got to expect that. You needed honesty, and if they showed you they were honest, you trusted them.
Has that influenced the type of coach you are, thinking back to what you wanted as a player?
It has. It has. And so, even though it may be harsh at times, at least they're telling you the truth, and you can appreciate that. You may not appreciate it at the moment, but over time you will.
All right, well, we have one more segment coming up here on the Todd Bowles Show. We'll be right back. It's time for our final segment here on the Todd Bowles Show. Casey Phillips here with head coach Todd Bowles. So now going into this next week against the Panthers division game, what is going to be the biggest thing that you feel like you want to see from your team this game to know that the lessons from this last week were learned?
Improvement, communication, improvement with the things that we did not do last week. Improvement in trusting each other, improvement and making plays. Red zone improvement on offense, third down and short improvement on offense, communication and third long improvement on defense, and special teams obviously covering kicks.
For you, knowing the Panthers, it's similar to the Falcons in the sense that typically these division teams you're very familiar with, but there's been a lot of change on what this team looks like, and then now even recently a whole new head coach as they've switched into Steve Wilks. So what are some of the biggest differences in this Panthers team as compared to years past, and then maybe how even them switching to a different coach can potentially affect what they'll look like this next week?
Well, they use McCaffrey in a lot of different ways now. He's flexed out like a receiver more. They found a bunch of different ways to get him the ball and still be effective. So they still have their playmakers down the field. I think their offensive line is a lot more physical. Their defensive line is physical as well. Their secondary guys have playmakers that are now healthy that we didn't see the last year or two. So, and Wilks is a very good disciplinarian, so I know those guys are going to be ready.
How about facing Baker Mayfield, and what are the things that you have to be aware of for him that he does well, and ways that maybe you guys feel like you could match up well against him?
Baker brings a lot of leadership to that team. He has a lot of moxie. He understands the game very well. He has a very quick release. He knows where to go with the football. He knows when to pull it down and run. So, defending him is going to be tough. We got to try to get the first read, the first and second read, because he knows where to go with the football. If we can make him hold it a little bit, we'll try to get there with the pass rush. But like I said, the offensive line is playing better than they have in the past. They've added some new guys, and they'll be tough.
How about on the defensive side of things for them? What do they tend to do well?
They're very strong up front. They get after it with the big DT from Auburn, but their corners play very good man-to-man with Horn and Jackson out there. They have a lot of speed. They're physical, and they get after it with the turnovers. So we're going to have to be careful with the football. What
do you feel like the message is going to be to the team about the significance of this game and what it means, of where each game means the same in terms of whether it's a division game or not, of the way it can affect the schedule, obviously, but just what it feels like this point in the season, like you talked about the pulse of the locker room. What is the message going to be going into Sunday?
It's never about them. It's always about us. If we take care of us and do the things we need to do, we don't have to worry about the opponent.
And how about the idea of now 3 games in 11 days is this stretch that you're in now because of the fact there will be the Thursday night game? Does that ever change anything about the way you try to use people, or not so much pitch counts, but just knowing that there's about to be a pretty taxing amount of time on these guys' bodies? Does that ever change how you try to use anybody?
The first game does not. Then the other 2 after that, you're going to have to see who's healthy and who's not, depending on how you practice them. So it may maintain some change for certain guys that need maintenance.
And so then finally, knowing the health situation that you're in right now, are there any guys you feel like you could be getting back in the next week or 2 that missed time this last week, or how do you feel about the overall health of the team?
It's still up in the air. The guys that are hurt are still hurt. We're going to go with the guys we have until they get healthy. When they get healthy, we'll be ready to roll.
And now for you, I feel like, what is the one thing maybe that you feel like you want to see offensively that could tell you something has changed in terms of, is it a stat? Is it a feeling on the game? What would tell you that offensively this team has started to become more of what they've been in the past, or you feel like they could be?
For me, it will be the feeling of the game, but I'll get that during practice, during the week. So I'll know by what we do in the ball game from a communication standpoint, whether we got better.
All right. Well, Coach, thank you so much as always for your time, and good luck this week.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks to all of you guys. We'll see you next week.